really excited to be here. You guys got to know me a little bit, so I wanted to just take a moment to get to know you. So I'm Mel. What's your name? Cool. Nice to meet you. Great name. That was nice of your parents to give you that name. So there's some things, I often think the best way to really get to know somebody is to go to their good friend and say, hey, what's Joseph about? I think I heard the name Joseph. What's he about? And they'll tell you, but I don't have time to do that. And then some of you don't have friends here or at all. So it's okay. I did not have friends. Listen, there was a season in high school where I did not have any friends. That wasn't very cool. It's okay. We'll talk about that later. So I'm just going to ask you some questions that are really important to me. And so that it doesn't get too chaotic, maybe you could just raise your hand. Tell me by raising your hand if, you're about Chick-fil-A. You love Chick-fil-A, you're all about Chick-fil-A. Okay. Yeah. About Chick-fil-A. I can prove that probably by looking in your car. Maybe if you drive, there's probably a Chick-fil-A cup and an old wrapper. You got an old chicken mini under the seat. And your bank account is just boom, $9 constantly, right? Or for some of you, 16. I don't know. And then, how many of you are I'm all about Taco Bell? That's my jam. I'm Taco Bell. Oh, okay. I'm learning a little bit about you. This third one's really important to me. It might be a little too serious for you, but you're high schoolers. It's really, really important to me. We got any Phineas and Ferb fans in the house? Here's the deal. I can look in your car and your bank account and ask you your favorite meal, but there's only one way to prove if you're a Phineas and Ferb fan, and that's if you help me sing the theme song. So let's go. We're going to do this real quick, and then we're going to get to Jesus, but I need to know if you guys are serious about this or not. So there's 104 days. Okay. This is where it gets real. Gonna tell it all. Phineas and Ferb are. Sing. Yes, okay. There's one part, my favorite part of the theme song is to end it. Mom, Phineas and Ferb are making a title sequence. You are my people. Okay, I feel good now. I think that we are united, kind of. There's one more, though. There's one more. Chick-fil-A was important to me. When I have a low point, Taco Bell is important to me. That Mexican pizza and that Baja Blast, let's go. And then Phineas and Ferb. But there's something that since I was your age, I was a junior in high school, the first time I stepped foot in church. And the first time that I ever heard about Jesus or the gospel, even though I grew up in Oklahoma where everyone's supposed to be Christian, my family was not, and no one ever told me about him. And the first time that I heard about him, it changed everything. Changed obviously the trajectory of my career and my friends and what I thought about myself. And so that's important to me too. So I need to know tonight if you believe that Jesus is actually for us forever. And on this one, you don't get to just raise your hand. I wish that it was that easy. And I need you to know that when I was working on this for tonight and I sat down and I wrote that down, Jesus is for us, not for me. He's for us. Forever, I had to ask myself, Mel, do you really believe this? And you don't get to raise your hand or sing a theme song. You have to prove this. And I thought, how can we prove this tonight together? Because we have to get this part right. Because when camp is over, if you believe this, then something has to be done. So I know some of you really, really, really miss school. And what I've done for you tonight is I've created a pop quiz. So this pop quiz only has 2 questions. You can't really fail it. That's just between you and the Lord. So we're going to go through 2 questions, and I'm going to ask you, and I need you to know that I asked myself these questions, and there's been times where I have done really well answering them and times in my life where I have not. And we're going to look at this scripture, and I pulled these 2 questions out of this moment when Jesus was praying for all of us to God, and we're going to answer them tonight. And I'm going to tell you some stories that I hope paint a really good picture, and then in the end, we're going to figure out if we believe this or not, and if so, what we are supposed to do with it. So I'm going to read this little point here, and I'm going to ask you the first question, and we are just going to dive deep into this. Are you ready? Awesome Chick-fil-A, Taco Bell, Phineas and Ferb fans, are you ready to figure out if we're all in, if we're a fan of Jesus, or if we're really following him? Let's go. So we're going to go, Lane already read it, and he is much better reader than me, but it's because I went to school in Oklahoma, so give me some grace. We are in John 17, and I'm going to read for you on this first part, just verse 20 and 21. And Jesus just got finished praying for his disciples. He just closed a prayer just for his best buddies, and now he's praying for everyone in the room, okay? And it says, "My prayer is not for them alone," talking about the disciples. "I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them," say all of them, "may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us." Say, be in us. Great job. "So they may also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me." He's saying, may they be in us so the world will believe. So what Jesus is saying here is, hey, God, can they look like us so the world sees us? And so he's putting this opportunity and this obligation on us to show the world that we believe in him. So the first question that I have to ask you is not, do you believe that Jesus is for us, but do you believe in Jesus? And the way that you answer that isn't by raising your hand or singing a theme song. It's by constantly being in motion towards him. Like, we are always moving towards something. We're like a compass. And if you ever look at a compass, it is constantly moving just a little bit, but it has a true north, even though it will sway a little bit. And what we have to do as believers who say, I believe in Jesus, that we have to constantly be going towards him. It looks a little bit like this. Let me tell you a story. I don't know how many of you in the room have your license yet, or maybe you just have your permit, but all of you are at least almost there. And what I need you to do tonight before you go to bed is just start praying for your parents or your guardians, because this is horrific. My son Aiden, he got his permit a couple years ago. He's 18 now, and here's why it's terrible: is you have this sweet little baby, and you love it, and you like feed it, and then it gets big, and you put it in this piece of metal that can go really, really fast and kill other people, or kill your baby, and then you, as a parent of a child that is in driver's ed, you have to sit in the passenger seat. And that is the moment that you really learn to pray. I was like, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, like just buckling that seatbelt. I was like, oh my goodness. And he's like my good one, like he's following the rules because he's the firstborn. But I was like, so we're driving, and we're driving for a little bit, and he's really kind. He really is a great kid. And he goes, hey, Mom, can I ask you a favor? And I'm like, yeah, like what? If I can ask you a favor to stay on the road, I'm like terrified at this moment. And he said, could you stop talking? If you've been learning to drive with your parents, maybe your mom's like being bossy, or your guardian's like telling you what to do because that's their job. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you're just making me nervous. If you could just be quiet for a moment. I was like, yeah, I'm not going to say a word. And he goes, yeah, right. And as Lane brought up, I'm a little competitive, so if you want me to do something, then tell me I can't do it. And I was like, one side of me was like, I'm sorry, you shouldn't be talking to your mother that way. But the other side of me was like, you want to bet? Bet. And so I said, okay, do you see that gas station down there? I bet you a candy bar and a soda that I'm not a peep. I'm probably not even gonna breathe until we get down there. And he was like, okay, deal. And so I locked it up, and I was gonna throw the key away, but I just put it in my pocket just in case. And so I was like, okay. And so I'm literally doing this because I was holding on with this like little handle in our car, and I'm just like, it's fine. And I'm praying, and I'm like, you're a good father. Just like turn on Caleb, and he's driving, and I'm like, okay, this isn't bad. We're doing fine, and I'm not saying a word. And then I see a stoplight. What's it called? Street light? I don't know. The light that's red, yellow, green, and it's green, and we all know that green means go. And then yellow, if you don't know this, if you haven't went to driver's ed yet, it means like slow down. And okay. And what he should have done is there's this gas pedal in a car, if you don't know, and your foot presses it. And when he saw the yellow, what I should have seen out of my eyes was like his foot just come up just a little. That's all I wanted, was just like a little bit of it. And I'm like looking, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say anything because I'm gonna win and hopefully live. And I'm looking, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. And so I was like turning the Caleb up, like, oh my gosh. And we're getting closer, and now the yellow light turns to red. And if you don't know, red means stop, or like we're gonna die. And so I'm like, okay, and I'm like trying not, and his foot should have went off the pedal into the other pedal, which is called the brake. And he's not doing either. And so I finally, as we're almost to the light, going like 40 miles an hour. This was so awesome, you guys. In the moment it wasn't. I just screamed, stop! And he's like, like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, and I'm like, and he's like, and the person next to us is like, oh my, there are still skid marks on the street, by the way. I have to drive past it every day. And I'm like, did you not see the light that's now like right above us? And he's like, no. First of all, don't talk to me that way. No. And I go, what were you looking at? And he goes, I was looking where you told me to look. And I said, what? And he goes, you told me when we got in the car, no matter what. Do you ever do like your mom's voice? And she's like, no matter what, don't speed. And I was like, you've been looking at the speedometer this whole time? I'm pretty sure I paid $350 for you to go to a class for 4 weeks, and you've been, and I go, okay, and we're still just like kind of halfway out, and everyone's looking at like, who are these people? And I'm like, okay, I did say that, but what I meant was always look ahead of you, no matter what. You keep your eyes on the road. Got it? And he's like, got it. And I'm like, at the same time, you also have to know how fast you're going. Yes, that is true. You have to do both. And he's like, it's kind of a lot. And I'm like, I know. That's why we don't give you a car when you're 4. Like, it is a lot. And I said, do you think you can do it? And he's like, I think we can do it. And I was like, cool. Pull into the gas station because I need the candy bar at this point. And so we pull in. I'm like, are you good? And he's like, good. Keep my eyes on the road. Know how fast. I'm like, cool. We're driving. I'm like, okay, we're still alive. Like, this is a great day to be alive. And we go, and out of the corner of my eye, I see this big yellow semi. It was yellow. Thank you, Lord. And then all of a sudden, he puts the blinker on like a really great driver, and he changes lanes. And we just get like I could have like licked the truck. I'm like, ah! Again, I scream, and he's like, Fur! And I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, did you not see the truck? And he's like, no. And I said, deja vu, like cue the Olivia Rodrigo song, like deja vu, like, I know. I said, you didn't see it? And he goes, no. And I said, how did you not see it? And he goes, well, I was doing what you said. I was looking ahead. You told me to look ahead and then kind of look at the speedometer, but always keep my eyes ahead. And I said, pull over. And I unbuckled my seatbelt. And I was like, Lord, We've got this. Get out of the car. So we changed. I got in the driver's seat. I was like, I've had enough today. He was like, same. And I said, here's the thing. Here's why driving is so complicated. And everyone in the room, you need to hear this, whether you're driving now or you're going to be driving, is it's complicated because you always have to keep your eyes on the road, no matter what. Your eyes have to stay here. You have to know where you're going. You keep your eyes there. You have to know exactly what's going on with your speed, and do you have gas, and is the car at the right temperature. But you also have to pay attention to all of the people around you, all at the same time. And if you don't do all three of those things, somebody is going to die. In case you're wondering, we didn't die that day. I'm still alive. We did it. We made it. And I tell him this, and I'm like, do you got it? And he's like, I should maybe go back to that class. And I'm like, no. Now, he has now been driving for a couple of years, and we've only had 2 minor accidents. So he listened pretty well. But about a year after this, we were in the car with my grandma. Her name's Beanie. She's so adorable. And Beanie got a new car, and she was like, I want to take you for a ride. That's the way grandmas talk in Oklahoma. And so Aiden is sitting in the front, and I'm sitting in the back, in the middle. And we go visit her friend, and then we're leaving, and the neighborhood has a gate. And as we're leaving, the gate starts closing, like, up ahead of us. And normal people would have noticed that the gate was closing, but Beanie didn't. And the gate hits, like, her front passenger tire, just poof. And then she just floored it. And so what happened was it was like, and just rips the side of her car off. And then once she got all the way through and all the damage was done, then she slammed on the brakes. And I'm at this point in the front because I wasn't wearing my seatbelt yet. And I was like, oh, I'm like having a flashback of this moment. I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, did you not see that giant gate with the yellow stripes all over it? And she's like, no, I was watching the road. And Aiden goes, hey, Beanie, a wise woman once told me. I was like, this boy. A wise woman once told me that the thing you do when you're driving is you keep your eyes on the road, but you also know what's going on around you. And I tell you that story because that's what it really looks like to be a good driver, but to also be a Christ follower. Like, it's easy to say, well, I'm a Christian or I believe, but a Christ follower looks like that. Like, our eyes are always on Jesus. Like, we are always in this forward motion, knowing where we're supposed to go. And if we're not 100% sure, we just follow him and do the next right thing. But we also pay attention to, are we going too fast or too slow? And are we running out of gas? And the really important part of this is that we pay attention to all of our surroundings and we don't get in other people's lanes and hurt them along the way. And that's what it looks like when Jesus is saying, may they be in us so the world knows that this is real. So the first question, when I asked you, do you believe in Jesus? You could answer that if I followed you around and I saw you constantly taking these steps towards Jesus. And you're going to have these moments. You're going to have these moments maybe where somebody has to scream but you have to keep your eyes on him. And like the compass, there's going to be moments that sway, but you have to pay attention to all of the people around you. And I should be able to follow you. If you say, I believe this, Mel, I believe that Jesus is for us forever, then I should be able to follow you and find Jesus. That's the way that question works. Do you believe in Jesus? You should be able to say, let's go. Let's go, Mel. The second question comes from the rest of this moment when Jesus is praying. And this is verses 22 and 23 maybe here? Let's see. I think that's what it is. It'll be fine. Jesus is continuing this prayer. He just said, may they be in us so the world knows. And then he says this. Yes, in verse 22, he says, I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one. Say one. I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to the complete unity. Say unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them, even as you have loved me. Then the world will know. Jesus just said, when they have unity, then the world will know. Before he said, when they see you and me and them, they'll believe. But now the world will know when you have unity. Basically, what he's saying here is you can't have unity with me and not have unity with them. You can't say that you believe in me and not believe in them. You can't be about me and not about these people. And that gets difficult because we rub shoulders with people, or we sit in a row with people, or we're in a small group with them, or a charter bus, or like people are complicated and difficult, and I get this. But what he's saying to us who say that we believe that Jesus is for us forever is that your job, if you're all wondering, like, I don't know what the Lord has called me to, what he's called you to is unity. It doesn't matter what college you go to or what profession you have. What he wants from you is to show the world that he is for them forever. It's kind of like this. I want to tell you another story. And this one, I need you to know that I'm going to be talking bad about some neighbors that I have. They're no longer my neighbors, so it's okay. But I've had these moments too, and so it rubs me really raw in this moment. And also, I didn't grow up in the church, and so I had some Christians in my past that didn't treat me very well. So these moments, like, they really get to me. And I'm not perfect by any means. I'm just highly aware of this. So I want to tell you a story about my really, really good Christian neighbors. I had moved into this neighborhood, and I prayed before I moved in. I prayed that the Lord sent me some neighbors that believed and some that didn't, and that the Lord gave us opportunity to show people that he was for them. And so when I moved in, there was these they just got out of college. There's like 3 of them that lived in this house across from me. And every Sunday night, I was like, they must really like football or something. And my other neighbor was like, no, they have like a Bible study. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. And then what I noticed is that they were actually really annoying when they were having their Bible study. Let me explain. They had a lot of people coming to this Bible study, which was so awesome, and I was really proud of them, but they were really terrible at parking. And if you read scripture, you should be good at parking. And you should be good at parking because what they were doing was they were angering everybody on the street. And when I say bad at parking, I mean like one time there was 2 tires in my yard, and like I have a curb. So they like burp, burp, up on that curb into my, and I was like, okay, like I paid for that grass and watered it, but no big deal. So I was like, I'm not gonna be mean about this. It's like they're learning to drive. They didn't have an awesome mom that like yelled at them when they were driving. It's okay. Until one day I had a rental car because I had been at a camp with some students, and I had a big van that I had to return. Every youth pastor loves driving those vans. And I needed to return it by 7 p.m. and I needed to eat and I needed to take a shower, and then I walk out and it's like 6:45 because I was really close to the rental car, and there is a car, you guys, at the bottom of my driveway parked sideways. Like my driveway goes like this. They just parked right at the bottom of it, and I was like, oh, these wonderful Bible study people. So I was like, oh, I need to leave. And so I just go over and I'm like, you can do this. And I ring the doorbell, bing bong, and like nobody answers. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get charged like $5,000 on the church credit card if I don't get this back. And so I'm ringing the doorbell now like real obnoxiously. And one of the girls opens the door and is like, can I help you? And I was like, actually, yes. I'm sorry to interrupt. And I could hear like music playing. They were singing Good, Good Father for a long time because that's what you do with that song. And I was like, hey, love what you're doing here. Great song, by the way. The red car is in my way. It's parked in my driveway. I really need to leave. And she goes, yeah, well, we're in the middle of worship, so it'll be a bit. And she shut the door, and I was like, okay. She's about to try to make me sin. I was like, if she wouldn't have shut that door, I would have been like, you're good, good father, wants you to move your car, okay? So I was like, oh my gosh. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I go back, and I'm like, I need to. So I go back, and I ring the doorbell again, and she's like, can I help you? And I'm like, I have got to leave. Like, they're going to charge me. She's like, we are praying. She'll be right out. And I'm like, I am so sorry. Why am I apologizing? And so I'm waiting, like, oh gosh, I got to go. And the girl like stomps out and is like, oh, my gosh. And she's like, of course, Caleb's like blaring, and she like moves her car, and I'm like, thank you, all things through Christ, love you, God bless. And I leave, and I get there like with 1 minute, and I'm like, oh, you are a good, good father, thank you. And I get back home, and as we turn into, my friend picked me up, and as we turn into my street, there's a U-Haul parked in the middle of the street. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like what are they doing now? Because it's parked like right in front of their house. And as I pull behind it, this lady stomps around it and she motions me to get out of the car. And I'm like really terrified. And I'm like, can I help you? And she's like, do you know whose cars these are? Because I'm trying to move into this house next door and they're parked in my driveway. And I'm like, yeah, I know whose car, I know. Right there, them. I said, you just need to bang really loud, because they might not be able to hear you. And she's like, okay. And she's like so angry. It was like, boom, like earthquakes. So I get out and I'm like, I should inspect the bricks on my house. I should not go inside. Like, what is about to happen here? Is this one loose? It was loose earlier. Like, just checking. And I hear like, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh, get 'em, new neighbor, let's go. She looked like a little crazy. She was wearing like a Def Leppard shirt. I was like, okay. And they're like, what? And so then I hear the screen door shut, and I hear her stomping away, and I look over my shoulder, and she stops at the end of their sidewalk, and she yells at the top of her lungs, I hate Christians. And I was so angry because that was my neighborhood, because she was my new neighbor. And it was my job to show her that Jesus is for us and for all. And I had been praying for that house. The moment I knew there were new people moving in, I had been praying, and that was my neighborhood. And now I have to figure out how to talk to her and not let her know what I do for a living. And I was so angry at them because they thought that their worship and their prayers was more important than people. And that is not what Jesus is showing us in this section when he's saying, Lord, let them be in me and in you, and let them have unity so the world knows. Like they thought raising their hands was more important than reaching out to the people around them. And that is not true. And I am not trying to sound arrogant, like I've never had these moments, but we have to be highly aware that as we're moving forward towards Jesus, that we don't have the right to run people over along the way. Do you get that tonight? Because what's going to happen is you're going to leave camp, and you're going to be really hyped, and you're going to be like, she's for us forever. And then you're going to feel like really high up and like hot and holy. But what you need to know is your job is not to be above people or to forget about people. It's to be united with them, whether they believe the same as you or not, because there's a world out there that is asking, who is for me? And most of the answers they get is nobody. But your life gets to tell them, Jesus is for you. He's for all and forever. And so if you believe that, you have to prove it. And they are watching. So show them. Show them with your life. Like raise your hands in here, but reach out there. Say the words in here, but speak the truth out there. Have your moment in here. But the people who are going to be a part of your Monday did not experience your Thursday. Is today Thursday? Okay, like they didn't experience this. And it is your job, if you say, I believe that he is for us forever. I believe he is for all forever. It is your job to prove it by answering, I am for him and united with him, but I am also for people. And I am united for them. There's a world out there asking, who is for me? So friends, go live a life that tells them that Jesus is for us forever. Let me pray for you. Jesus, I thank you that you are enough, that you are for all, and you are forever. I pray that you make us aware of what's ahead of us and around us, and that we live a life that shows people that you are for us forever.